What's going on, YouTubers? It's me, Johnny. Anyways, it's a pretty good day today here in Chile, Guatemala. I did some trading. I traded Hathor against BTC. I was actually surprised. It wasn't really the best trade setup. I made about, I think 10 or 12. I think I made closer to 15%. That's one thing I like about crypto is you can trade on decentralized exchanges. You can get 5 or 10% moves or 20% moves with absolutely zero leverage. And like compared to like FX, like where you have 50 to 1 leverage, or you can turn it down to 10 to 1 or 20 to 1, but you can let trades play out. And I would say in the bull market, it's great. We'll have to see what happens when the bear market comes for cryptocurrency. But anyways, that's not what I want to talk about. I was listening to some shows today about YouTube. I was listening to YouTube and I was watching some videos by who is it? Nomad Capitalist. Anyways, Nomad Capitalist is making some pretty good videos lately, talking about how a lot of foreigners are going to Nicaragua. Then he talked about the same thing in Central Europe. People are going to Serbia, which, by the way, Serbia is a great place to visit. Some of my friends visited there. They had a really fantastic time. It's a beautiful city, apparently with very low cost of living. But, of course, it's a little too cold for me in the wintertime. But anyways, I was listening to Nomad Capitalist talk about a news article he read about in the UK. I forget which publication it was, but Boris, the prime minister there, is putting out a balloon or putting out an idea or a suggestion for a law that they'll turn your passport off if you're convicted of, right now they're saying if you don't have the vaccine, you have a drug crime, a DUI, a lot of crimes like that. And they're saying you served your jail time if there was any jail time, you served your time, you got your vaccine, all that kind of stuff, but they still won't give you your passport back. And this is what I've been kind of like, I know some of the viewers are going to think this is insane, but this is what I think is the future for a lot of people. People really don't think this will happen, and maybe it won't. Maybe it won't. Maybe some of the stuff being printed in Europe is just a bridge too far, and we're going to snap out of this nonsense we've been in for the last few years or last decade or so. Everything's going to go back to being hunky-dory, and the government's going to stop printing money, and the government's going to stop infringing on our freedoms and liberties and all that. But I kind of doubt it. What I see happening is the government shutting people's passports off, the government either putting pressure on banks or making a law the banks have to like shut your ATM account off if you live overseas or if you vacation overseas too long. These rules, etc., whatever they are, they'll have these rules and regs where they just automatically shut your ATM card off. In fact, if you've listened to some of the news coming out of the world, they want to have it so if you spend too much energy, you leave too much of an energy footprint, they just shut your ATM card off, or they scan what you're buying and they don't let you pay for certain products and services. Now, right now, that would be hard to do, I admit. But as we get crypto, as the government issues their own stable coins or their own currencies, then I think they will scan for that or they will write code for that. I think it's pretty much inevitable. So this is what we're looking at in the next 5 to 10 years. Although I think it's going to be hard to enforce in the developing world because they'll want to copy this stuff and do it to keep their protesters down and whatever they don't approve of. But anyways, the interesting thing was from March Nomad Capitalist is he's pointing out like a country like the UK that's under a more conservative government is wanting to have reasons and excuses to turn off your passport even after you served your jail time or your prison time or whatever it is. Now, I'm not like telling you like I'm for criminals or anything. I'm just saying, rightly or wrongly, if you get convicted of a crime in the UK, they want to turn your passport off. And then when you serve your time, you can't even get it back. So I imagine if they were to do that, they would make a lot of stuff criminal acts. And then you would just lose your passport and you wouldn't get it back and you couldn't travel. Now, that would just be legally. As we can see from the news all over the world, there's millions of people flooding into states, and it's millions. It's actually quite a lot. There's millions of people flooding into Europe from across Turkey into the EU, and then all the way into as far as the United Kingdom. We can see that in the channel every day. There's, well, not every day, but many days there's troubles there and drownings and stuff like that. But anyways, what's my point? My point is we're getting closer and closer to the point where you probably can't leave your country of birth. You're probably not going to be able to easily or cheaply transfer your wealth from one jurisdiction to another. And if you don't have the right travel documents, you're probably not going to be able to legally travel. All I can say to that is, at least in Central America, wherever I go, you can either travel with your not your cedula, that's what they used to call it, but your DPI without a passport. And also, too, a lot of these borders are so porous, you can just walk back and forth pretty easy. But my favorite places to chill out in, like Guatemala and Honduras, but Honduras and Mexico and El Salvador are just easy to go into. Like, I can't remember if I said this in a video before. I may have said this privately to someone, but one time I entered El Salvador and I forgot to get my passport stamped. I mean, that's how lackadaisical it is. Even at the main borders, I had to pay a small fee to get my passport stamped back into Guatemala for my residency. So that wasn't a big deal. But anyways, I was going to mention something else, but I think I mentioned in a previous video. But even in South America, like especially in the parts of Brazil that's out in the bush, you can cross those borders pretty easy. And even in Chile, a super conservative country like Chile, like the European traveler told me 2 days ago, some Americans, he said, cross the border without paying any fees or showing their passport. He didn't think that was appropriate, but I don't know, like, if you can get away with it, and if you're willing to take the chance, people are going to do that to avoid the it used to be $160 to go into, if you're an American passport holder to travel into Chile, but I think with exchange rate being down now, it's only $130, but it's quite a bit actually. And as far as exchange rates go, Brazil, Colombia, those places are just getting cheaper and cheaper to travel to, but it's getting harder and harder to legally comply to visit those countries. That's another thing I see happening that I don't like. More and more countries are going to make you have the vaccine passport. And for right now, I have it, but like, I see what's going to happen is you're going to have to get your vaccine passport updated every 6 months or every 3 months. So if you get stuck somewhere and you don't have the latest vaccine, you might not be able to leave, which might be good if you're in your favorite country and you never want to return, or it might be bad if it's really costly and expensive and a pain in the neck to do all that, or if you just don't want it. I don't know how things are going to develop, but at least for now, Colombia, Ecuador, and Peru are making it really, really difficult to be a tourist there. You're going to have your COVID card, and then allegedly you're going to need it when you go to a gym or a restaurant. But from the people I know there, they're telling me it's just in the tourist areas. It's not being enforced anywhere else. But anyhow, as more and more data comes out in the United States and in the EU and Canada and Australia, it's just getting harder and harder to legally travel. I also, too, I think fees for crossing borders and fees for visas are going to go through the roof to try to discourage people from traveling, and also to discourage people from leaving high tax jurisdictions to travel into lower tax jurisdictions, because more and more the governments are realizing the tax cows are leaving. It's one thing when the wealthy and the elites leave, but it's something else when the middle classes leave. Because at least I can only comment on the States and Canada, although I'm not a Canadian citizen, but it's primarily the middle classes who pay a lot of the tax now, because now more and more with accounts and various tax treaties, if you're a Canadian or a U.S. person, you can pretty much get your taxes low if you get out of a high tax jurisdiction, and or if you use an LLC that's properly structured. Maybe you can't get rid of all your tax, but like my mom found out, her taxes went in half, from $50,000 to $25,000 just by setting up an LLC. As people figure this stuff out, they're going to do what they can do to legally get out of paying a lot of this tax. And then, another comment or another thing I want to comment on real quick is I was watching another YouTuber I like watching. He's in the States. He's an entrepreneur, and he had another car stolen. He's gotten out 2 cars stolen this year, but he's pointing out the rise in crime is just going through the roof in the U.S. And from what my mom was telling me in Phoenix, it was pretty bad when I was just recently up there, but now it just seems like it's just accelerating. Maybe not accelerating is the right word, but it's high and staying high. And I expect the homeless problem to really explode. I expect violent crime to explode in North America. And I expect the economy is going to slow down to a point where a lot of these social problems are just going to get out of control. Then on top of that, you're going to see, in my opinion, you're going to see more and more social spending or social programs cut. So that will be interesting to see how all that works out. Then on top of that, I just think you're going to see more, I hate to call them COVID requirements, but for lack of a better term, more COVID requirements. Speaking of that, I was just checking out, I want to say it was Suriname. I might be wrong, but there's still a few countries in South America where, like, if you want to visit, you have to have COVID health insurance as you can't enter the country. So that's still a thing in some of these countries where, a COVID test of $100 or $200, getting 2 or 3 COVID tests for you can enter, paying for health insurance. They're just going to make it so expensive to travel. It's going to be priced out of the market for a lot of people. Now I know the viewers are thinking, who's going to go to Suriname? Yeah, I realize not a lot, but I was surprised to see that they still have to do that. And I was pretty much checking almost every country in South America if there's any country you can get into really easy, and there's really not. And I'm going to have to check to see what the airport is here where I'm at to see how much it is to get a PCR test or antigen test. Because if they're the same, I'd rather just get the PCR test. But it's to the point now where you just have to get a PCR test just to get in the airport, get on a plane now. The other thing that sucks about traveling is I was looking at some pretty cheap tickets, $200 to fly to South America or $250, and that doesn't include any of your carry-ons. So they're just going to nickel and dime me, and I'm just hearing about all these planes or airlines raising their fees for a lot of things. And it used to be you got one free carry-on, and now you get a carry-on, from what I saw, $75 for just one carry-on. That's if you pay in advance and all that jazz. It's more if you don't. So I just see it's getting harder and harder to travel, and it's going to get to the point where you're not going to be able to travel as easily and as flexibly as you could. You probably have to stay in one spot, which I don't really like, and I'm not looking forward to. But if this COVID thing doesn't let up, it's going to be really difficult to travel to a lot of countries. I'm just going to settle on Central America and Mexico, but I'm hoping I'm wrong about a lot of this stuff and this stuff goes away. But for right now, it doesn't look like that's going to happen. But I'm looking, there's some pretty affordable places in Mexico on the beach, and then there's El Salvador, and then I want to visit some places up in the mountains in Honduras. And actually, there's quite a few, well, not quite. El Salvador is pretty small. There's some, I'm reluctant to say Altiplano, but there's a Wahua, if I'm pronouncing it right. I want to visit there. But last time I looked, the prices for a lot of the beach resorts, a lot of the places, a lot of the places where you can actually go to without a COVID card or any of that, like Mexico and El Salvador, prices are going up. And as one viewer said in my comment section, these prices can keep going up. And I just want to mention, like, some of these beach towns like Huatulco, there's a lot of foreign capital. I mean, I just know a few people, and I don't know very many people, but I just know a few people who are buying and renovating there. And he's absolutely right. That is going to push up prices because they're buying these places up, they're renovating them, and they're flipping them for a fast buck, or they're just selling, or they're renting them out, and they're renting them out at gringo prices. They're not going to rent them out at local prices. So these prices are just going to keep going up. And not only that, you can, well, I don't want to say there's a flood of Americans, but you can see in the future, and in right now, there's more and more Americans building in Mexico and leaving the United States just to live here full-time or part-time. They just don't want to be in the States anymore. They're tired of I would say the hustle and bustle and the rules and regulations of making money. The taxes and the regulations are getting so onerous. and complying with all these health things up there. They're just, retiring and then move to Mexico and starting up businesses there and doing stuff there to just kind of escape the rat race, keep a low profile, and keep their options open, because at least for right now, Mexico is making it somewhat easy to migrate to. El Salvador is not too tough. Guatemala kind of cracked down. They're making it a little more difficult. Let's see. I don't know much about Belize, but you can get a residency pretty easy in Paraguay. Now, when I say all this stuff, I'm assuming the viewers have a pristine criminal record and all that, because all these countries, not all of them, but I think all of them now require an FBI background check, an FBI background check, with maybe the exception of Honduras. They might not. So if you have any legal problems, that might be one of the last places you can get a residency real easy. Now, sometimes there's a workaround with some of those things if you're married to a local, but I don't want to say that too much because I'm really not 100% sure. But sometimes when it comes to income requirements and police checks, there's workarounds. By that, I just mean you don't have to get the police check from the States. You can get out locally if you've been here a while. And you also don't have to have any, I better be careful, but yeah, I know for a fact, I just know that you don't have to have any income requirements, or you don't have to prove any income requirements. But how much longer that will last, I don't know. And again, I'm not married to a local. I just know people like that. When I came here, it was like that just for everyone. And now they've changed it. So now if you're a resident, you have to prove some visible income. You don't have to pay tax on it, but you have to prove it. But I got lucky. I got grandfathered in. I don't have to do that. So I just see them meaning these governments making it harder and harder to get a legal residency. And they're going to make it so you have to be legally resident somewhere, so you're taxable somewhere, or at least if you're tax-free, you're complying and, legally wherever you're supposed to be to comply with all these kind of crazy rules and regulations. It's now being implemented. None of this stuff was really a big deal when I was younger. Seems like when it was about the mid-90s when all this kind of started, and then in the 2000s kind of got on with a lot of earnest, and now in the 2020s, I can just see this just going it's going to be very, very difficult to, wherever you're born in, whatever country you're born in, you might be stuck there for the rest of your life, especially if you're born into the lower classes. They're not going to make it easy for you to leave legally to another country. And then I think we're going into another transition of kind of a new economy and a new way of life with all this technology that's coming on, like with AI and software, the way it's going. So the traditional ways of earning money, things like that, it's going to change so dramatically that the opportunities to earn a living and make money is going to be so different from what it is now that it's really hard to make any long-term predictions how that will pan out. I'm just going to assume some countries and some states and some places in the world are going to break off and go to a more freedom and liberty oriented society. Other places are going to drop down and go into a more of a, command and control kind of, let the government decide what you're going to do for your life, and you'll probably be on some kind of government, for lack of a better term, government aid system for a while. And it will be really, really difficult to get out of that. It will be really difficult. There's so many rules and regulations in the U.S. If you fall afoul of any of them, it's getting to the point. It's to the point now, if you have a DUI in the U.S., there's a lot of countries you can't visit. That's just going to accelerate. I know a lot of people don't think that's a big deal. I'm lucky I don't have any of those problems. But like people who did stupid things when in college, that's on your record now, and some countries won't let you in because you did those stupid things. And it used to be none of that would be discoverable online, but now with the AI technology and with government sharing more and more information, that stuff's online. So maybe what you did a long time ago was legal, but then they changed the law wherever you're going, and now you can't live there because you did that a long time ago, not understanding that would be held against you when you wanted to move and live somewhere else or whatever. Anyway, those are just the thoughts for the day. Like, share, subscribe, and leave a comment. And have a great day wherever you are in the world.